Hello everyone, this is Saurabh Sharma. Let's start with the current affairs of 4th of January 2022. Today in this video, the first topic we will be taking up is the Treaty on the Non-Proliferation of Nuclear Weapons, that is, we commonly known as NPT. This NPT is very much important because it is related to the nuclear weapons, nuclear possession, arms raising, military strength, and it is strategically very important what is according to the geopolitical condition nowadays prevailing and the changing equation of the nations. Let's say earlier India and Russia were closer. Now India is moving towards United States of America and Russia, and China's equation is changing. So, and Pakistan is being our immediate neighbor, and China in the northern side, they both are possessors of nuclear weapons. And so strategically and for the sovereignty and security of the nation, it is militarily very important to have nuclear weapons. And India being a nuclear state, what is the obligation put by the NPT members, and especially after 1970 and in 2020 it completed 50 years, and now what is the changing equation about this NPT and all, and what are the issues and why India is opposing it, what is the India's stand, and what is the stand of members of NPT, and how did it come to the enforcement, and what has been the course of development so far. So this is all we will be looking into this video. So let's start. The context why this Non-Proliferation Treaty came into force was that on August 6th and 9th, 1945, it was the time of ending of World War II. The twin Japanese city of Hiroshima and Nagasaki were bombed by the United States with a powerful and terrible weapon, the atom bomb. The names of those bombs were Little Fat Man and Little Boy. The act brought about the end of World War II, but with a terrible price. That means total casualties accounted between 130,000 to somewhere about 2.5 lakhs between the two cities, with countless other injured and suffering from radiation sickness. And this radiation sickness effect can also be seen even now, even till today. That means like after 75 years, you can see the effect of those radiation sicknesses. Then the after effects of the bombings were a serious cause of concern among world powers, along with potential misuse of the weapon, that is nuclear weapon. And this concern led to call for a safeguard to ensure nuclear arms control that came in place. It was in 1961 when United Nations resolution called for a treaty to prevent an arm race for nuclear weapons, because everyone observed this idea that with just one dropping of bomb, that is nuclear bomb, on two cities far away located, and the world's second biggest war ever seen in the history came to an end. So this might have led to the quick resolution of any kind of dispute when it comes to force. So this nuclear race and arms possessing race for nuclear weapons became so prominent. Therefore, to put a check and balance and control over this race, this treaty, this Non-Proliferation Treaty came into force, and today we know it as the NPT. This treaty was drafted and negotiated by 18 Nation Committee on Disarmament, and United Nations sponsored organization based in Switzerland. So 18 Nation Committee on, that is Nation Committee on Disarmament, sponsored by United Nations, and post 1961. Now this treaty was opened for signature in 1968 and it came into force in 1970. Hence in 2020 it completed 50 years. And this today, like this news, 5 global nuclear powers and the 5 permanent United Nations Security Council members, that is China, France, Russia, UK, US, pledged to prevent atomic weapons spreading and to avoid nuclear conflict. The main issues related to this treaty is that it is biased in nature. It is not keeping neutral checks and balances, and it is making the other states who do not possess these nuclear weapons as subservient, because the group of this 5 Security Council members, they are having the absolute monopoly over nuclear possession weapons or nuclear weapons possession, and it somewhere for sure ascertain the monopoly and hegemony in world geopolitical situation. So this is the entire context we have to look this treaty in. Now, coming back, this treaty on non-proliferation of nuclear weapons, commonly known as Non-Proliferation Treaty or NPT, is an international treaty with an objective to limit the escalation of nuclear arms race and the technology related to it. That means there are 2 aspects: the escalation of nuclear arms race and technology related to it. That means that none other than the 5 members who are the permanent members of Security Council, that is USA, UK, Russia, China and France, other than these 5 permanent nations, nobody else can possess or make this nuclear weapons at any cost, because before 1970 these 5 members were possessing it, and they were the fast pro towards the drafting of this NPT to keep or to put a checks and balance on other than those nations who are not members of Security Council. Second part here is that these nations will not transfer any technology or material to other nations so that they can also develop this technology and they become a NPT or nuclear possessing states. So this is the 2 aspects of this treaty. Now, further goals of the treaty also included promoting cooperation in the peaceful use of nuclear energy and achieving complete nuclear disarmament. Here, military use is absolutely prohibited and banned. It is assured by the International Atomic Energy Agency that no nation is making any nuclear program to give a military strength by making nuclear weapons for the militarily use. This is how India in 1999 and 1974 tried to become a nuclear armed state or nuclear weapon state, because its own security and sovereignty issues were threatened, because the China, being an immediate neighbor in the north, is never shared a great equation with India when it comes to strategic dialogues, diplomatic relations, especially after 1960-162 Indo-Chinese War. Therefore, it became so prominent for India to have this treaty, to have this nuclear possession by Operation Buddha in 1974 during the reign of Mrs. Indira Gandhi, and then during the Vajpayee government in 1999. Then this treaty has completed 50 years. So within that context, let's take a look at who has signed the NPT. Ever since it came into effect since 1970, though it was open for signatures in 1968, the NPT has 187 nations who are party to it. At present, there are 191 states who have joined the treaty. 191 states who have joined the treaty in 2022, and in 2020, when this 50 years completed, it was 187 nations. That means within the last 2 years 4 states have also joined it. Now, Initially, when the treaty came into force in 1970, it was originally for 25 years, but it was extended indefinitely at a review conference in 1995 because the technological aspect of all the countries were moving on hike. It was spiking and the capability was also developing at individual levels. So therefore, this NPT had to be extended for an indefinite period back in 1995. Now, the NPT prohibits the nations who do not have nuclear weapons from acquiring them on its own or from others' assistance, at the same time prohibiting the nuclear states, that means those 5 members of Security Council, from helping others in acquiring the weapons. But here, one more thing. Pakistan developed its nuclear weapons by the supplying help from China for the fissile material. The fissile material, all the technologies and other expertise were even fundings provided by the Chinese government without letting the world know to the Pakistan, because Pakistan is considered as an iron friend in China. I don't know what sort of iron friend Pakistan is that India cannot attain this position in eyes of China. Anyways, the International Atomic Energy Agency, that is IAEA, which is the successor of United Nations Atomic Energy Commission. The commission successor is IAEA, verifies the compliance with the treaty. The compliance in turn is enforced by the United Nations Security Council. United Nations Security Council has put an embargo on Iran's nuclear enrichment facility, and here P5+1, that is Germany, became the mediator, and they tried to resolve the solution, and Iran had to undergo the embargoes in respect of international trade, diplomatic relations and other things, because Iran, being a Shia state within the Gulf region, had it had the position of nuclear arms or nuclear weapons, the hegemony of United States by controlling the equation within the Gulf region would have been suffered. So there are a total of 9 nation states that possess nuclear weapons. The 5, as you know, that they are permanent members of Security Councils. Number 1, USA, UK, France, Russia and China. And other than those 5, we have India, Pakistan, and then North Korea and Israel. These are the 9 members who possess nuclear weapons. So who are they? Nuclear weapon states. It's 5 Security Council members, 5 permanent members, plus India, North Korea, Israel and Pakistan, China's iron friend. This is what they call Pakistan as. Now, and let's take a look at why India never signed the treaty. As per the stance of the Indian government since beginning, the treaty in its current form, prevailing in 2022, is unfair, as it virtually states that the 5 victorious nations of World War II will have the specific right to possess nuclear weapons, while condemning the rest of the nations who do not have the weapons to be subservient to the whims and fancies of the nations those who possess. That means that India believes that the treaty specifically defines that only the 5 victorious nations, those who were holding the nuclear possession before 1970, are only allowed to possess the nuclear arms. Other than those, nobody else can do. That actually specify that other nations who do not possess nuclear arms are subservient, and they are to the whims and fancies of the nations who do. That means it establishes the hegemony in one or the other manner. In short, the treaty divides the world into nuclear haves and have-nots. And those who have, they will definitely try to make or ascertain their authority over those who have nots. And if any country, all countries have the prime responsibility to maintain the sovereignty of their nations and international security of their nation and diplomatic relations. So these 5 powerful members can also play with the diplomatic equations in the world, and they are very much capable of changing the geopolitical equations in the world affairs if others do not try to do or do not try to have this nuclear position or nuclear arms position for their own security purposes. India, being a responsible state, is ideally capable to hold these nuclear arms, but Pakistan's fate and Pakistan efforts while maintaining the world peace and respecting the human rights is not at all a good player to possess it. However, China is only playing along with the by putting their guns on the shoulders of Pakistan against India. So this is the entire context here. India's traditional position has always been that either the five nations denuclearize or everyone has the same rights as those who possess them. Either you denuclearize, we will denuclearize. But if you possess, so it is mandatory for us to possess it because China holds it and our major problem is with China. Also, escalations of tensions by one of its nuclear armed neighbors, that is China, was the primary reason why India conducted its own nuclear test in the first place in 1974 under Project Gotham, Project Smiling Buddha. It is the same escalation by India that prompted Pakistan to conduct its own nuclear test, though it was helped by China from A to Z of the projects. So Pakistan says that India, being an immediate enemy neighbor of Pakistan, so Pakistan should also possess this, and China helped it. So therefore, this linearly or adjacent placed three neighbors, that is Pakistan, India and China, they have this and they have their own reasons to have it. And one of these members is the permanent member of Security Council, that is China. So in a nutshell, what is India's stand on NPT? It is India is one of the only 5 countries that either did not sign the NPT. Who are the 4? Israel, North Korea, Pakistan and India. And the 5th, who was the member of NPT but later withdrew, it is South Sudan, right? So South Sudan was the member. South Sudan was member, but later withdrew its membership, saying that it is a biased treaty. It divides the treaty into nuclear weapons haves and have-nots. So there are 5 members who never, 4 members never signed it, plus 1 who was the member who later withdrew. India always considered that NPT is a discriminatory and so refused to sign it. Unless the conditions are changed, India will never think of joining the treaty. This is India's stand. And India has opposed the international treaties aimed at non-proliferation since they were selectively applicable to the non-nuclear powers and legitimized the monopoly of the 5 nuclear weapons. That these 5 can have, but you cannot have. So this is not at all justified, valid reason that India should go back and sign the treaty and denuclearize itself. India can only do that once those 5 members, of course, primarily Pakistan, who is not a member, but has to do it at the first place. Because India ever been facing this issue with Pakistan and already had gone into 3 tragic wars without any negative actions from its own side. Then what are the drawbacks of the treaty? Let's take a look. The main drawback of the treaty are that it never held accountable the 5 nations who possessed nuclear weapons at the time, because no one actually criticized United States at any international forum that United States should not have dropped those nuclear weapons bombs on such a tiny island nation of Japan. Though it was World War II situation, but all the countries, major countries of the world were actually thirsty of blood of each and every opponent. So it was not at all fair for United States to drop those bombings, and the accountability is absolutely nil or negligible for the 5 state members who are the Permanent Security Council members and who are allowed under this treaty to possess nuclear weapons. At the same time, the enforcement of the treaty is also a serious cause of concern. Despite the threat of economic sanctions, like United States put an embargo on Iran and other serious consequences, North Korea detonated its first bomb in 2006. Now, even Iran is poised to go down the same route, right? So the treaty even has serious loopholes which can be exploited by other nations in order to have their own nuclear weapons program. It is not feasible at this point of time to have this new non-proliferation treaty to be discussed by putting the same equation and not abiding, and the rules are different for others and for the possessors. Regardless, it is clear that the world is a better place because of the non-proliferation treaty. It was predicted that about 25 nations will possess nuclear weapons, but the mere presence of it has reduced to 9. So though it has been working finely, but those members who have signed NPT and those who are not possessing it, they are incapable, of course. And those who have it at present, like 9 states who are holding it, that is 5 plus 4, they are not helping others to possess it, because everyone wants to establish their hegemony, and not hegemony, actually monopoly at first place, that none other contender should become the nuclear weapon state. The NPT was not the only reason for this, but the mere presence of the safeguard can at least promise an era of peace, and if the current loopholes are fixed, it will fulfill such a promise. That means all the loopholes, that is equation, equity, equality, and all the rules for, like similar rules for all the members. Then issues with non-proliferation treaty, it criticizes the treaty to be discriminatory as it focusing on preventing only horizontal proliferation, while there is no limit for vertical proliferation. What is vertical proliferation? Vertical proliferation is the advancement or modernization of a nation state's nuclear arsenal. That means if United States wants to explore more or wants to retain more nuclear weapons, it can do the technological explorations on its own by putting on its technology, on its resources, on its manpower and funding. So it will be called as vertical proliferation. However, if China has helped Pakistan to attain or to retain this or to develop this nuclear weapon, so it is the transfer of technology, fissile fuel and resources. So it is known as the horizontal proliferation. So it is only banning the horizontal proliferation, rather vertical proliferation is still maintaining the status quo. That means it is allowed by the 5 members. Next, what is peaceful nuclear explosions? As India has been contending about that India always conducted a peaceful nuclear explosion and it was never for military purposes. That means that PNEs, that is peaceful nuclear explosions, are nuclear explosions conducted for non-military purposes, though it is only said that all the explosion or experiments are conducted for non-military purposes. That means for ensuring the energy needs and making use of nuclear energy in other medical facilities, agricultural facilities, science and technology, for food preservation and food enhancement, and ensuring the food security aspects of the country. Though the major advancement is generally the vision for the application of such experiments in the field of military only. The US proposed to prohibit PNE rights and instead offered to provide the technology on a commercial basis. The United States is playing a very smart game here, that bar everyone from making any expansion within the field of nuclear mass or arm race by putting the NPT in force. And if they want anything or any such technology, they must buy it from the developed nation or those who possess nuclear arms, those who are allowed to do that. So it means they want to encash their technology. So this is that United States is opposed to peaceful nuclear explosions. The Indian representatives consistently termed the offer as atomic apartheid and commercial super monopoly. Atomic apartheid means like only 5 are superior, others are subservient, and they are not allowed to make any such technological advancement, and hence only the technology will be transferred from developed to developing nations. Hence it establishes the atomic apartheid and insisted that PNE rights needs to be integral to all peaceful users of nuclear energy. India conducted its first PNE in 1974 under the code name Spilling Buddha. Then what is the failure of disarmament process? The NPT is largely seen as a Cold War era instrument that has failed to fulfill the objective of creating a pathway towards a credible disarmament process, because no strategic dialogues have ever happened, never tried to bring all the stakeholders on board and to discuss it in a very rational manner. Hence, it has failed to fulfill the real objectives of creating a pathway towards a credible disarmament process. Second thing, United States, Russia, China have never shown the world their pro-commitments to disarm themselves, either gradually, even not swipely. They should gradually decrease their arms positions, and they should take the use of disarmament so that world can have a faith. At least India should have this trust build up over these countries that they are actually wanting the world to be a nuclear disarmed planet. Then treaty proposes no tangible disarmament roadmap, no reference to testing ban or to the freezing of production of either fissile materials or nuclear weapons, and omitted provisions for reductions and elimination. So there is nothing such is seen in this foggy environment of NPT, that how the world is reacting, especially the 5 permanent members, and what sort of examples is put across to the people or to the countries who do not possess it. It instead allowed sustenance and expansion of arsenals by stipulating January 1, 1967 as the cutoff date to determine the nuclear weapon state. That means before 1967 January 1, who held the nuclear arms, they declared as nuclear arms state. Otherwise, all the states must be declared themselves as non-nuclear weapon state. So these 4 states, Russia, Pakistan, Israel, Pakistan, North Korea and India, are the 4 states who have this nuclear weapon, and they are nuclear weapon state. But in the eyes of them, in the eyes of 5 members, it is the illegal possessors according to the treaty, though India have never signed it and never joined it. So this thing about nuclear weapon states and like nuclear proliferation treaty, here now with relation to these treaty, there are some more arrangements we have. So let's take a look about that too. A number of multilateral treaties have been established with the aim of preventing nuclear proliferation and testing while promoting progress in nuclear disarmament. This include NPT, as we have discussed. Next is treaty banning nuclear weapons test in the atmosphere, in outer space and underwater, and also known as partial test ban treaty. NPT stops or it prohibits the possession, enrichment, tech transfer, and this, even though like if by any means any state has got any of these things, that means it got the technology transfer, it got the fissile material, it got the enrichment facility under the cover of IAEA or by sidelining the IAEA, but it cannot do the weapon test in atmosphere, outer space, underwater. It is known as partially test ban treaty. So it means if escaping NPT, you'll be caught in PTBT. These 2 things. Then Comprehensive Nuclear Test Ban Treaty, which was signed in 1996 but has yet to enter into force. Next, the Treaty on the Prohibition of Nuclear Weapons, opened for signature in 2017 but has yet to enter the force. So this was about the nuclear weapons treaty and how the countries are preventing others to do that, and the new states can only have this nuclear energy usage in the field of peaceful nuclear technology and equal access to this technology for all state parties in the field of pharmacy, agriculture, food processing or food industry, or energy security. But United States is a pro contender who says that for these purposes the technology can only be transferred on commercial basis, so that it can fetch money, and in this way a proper check and balance can be maintained. But this is again a discriminatory treaty. If all the members do not voluntarily surrender all the weapons and they declare themselves as that they have disarmed themselves, by the time none other nation, those who are possessing it and those who are willing to possess it, should be asked or should be stopped somewhere. However, in the finalization of the things, nuclear weapons usage for military purposes is absolutely not ideal, advisable, or it is not good for the humanity and human race to exist on this planet. It should be understood by those who are holding the hundreds and thousands of nuclear weapons, rather asking those who are just in the possession of 5, 6 or 7 nuclear arms weapons, like countries like Pakistan, India, North Korea, Israel. So it must be created an equitable or an equality based environment or atmosphere before discussing it with others and all the members. Otherwise, the countries like South Sudan, who have signed it previously, now they withdrew it. The time is not far that other nations will also start doing that. Then NPT, which has been working fairly fine for the past 50 years, the new instrument will need to be developed, and it is not at all a good thing seeing the current geopolitical situations around the world. So that was all about the Non-Proliferation Treaty, about the nuclear arms weapons. Thank you so much.